My name is Ria, and at 33 years old, I built a real estate empire from nothing while living in the shadow of my perfect older sister. Growing up, I learned that silence can cut deeper than words. At my father's birthday dinner last month, my sister Amanda mocked me about her rent increasing to $5,600. The entire family erupted in laughter at my expense while my parents sat in approving silence. Little did they know, I stayed perfectly calm because the building was actually mine. Before I tell you how I turned the tables on my family, drop a comment telling me where you are watching from, and hit that subscribe button if you have ever had to stand up for yourself when no one else would. I grew up in a middle-class suburban neighborhood outside Boston. Our house was comfortable but modest. A four-bedroom colonial with a small backyard where neighborhood kids would gather to play kickball in the summers. To outsiders, we probably looked like the perfect American family, but appearances can be deceiving. My sister Amanda is 5 years older than me. From the moment I can remember, she was the golden child in our family. She had straight-A grades, was homecoming queen captain of the debate team, and seemed to excel effortlessly at everything she touched. Our parents, Martin and Diana, never missed an opportunity to praise her accomplishments. Dad worked as an accountant at a prestigious firm downtown. He wore crisp suits, carried a leather briefcase, and spoke in the measured tones of someone who calculated risk for a living. Mom was an administrator at the local high school, the same one Amanda attended, and where she broke every academic record. They were respected members of the community, active in local politics, and hosted dinner parties where Amanda was always paraded around as their crowning achievement. I can still picture our living room walls. They were a shrine to Amanda. Her debate trophies occupied the central display case. Her graduation photos from every grade hung in chronological perfection. Her newspaper features for academic competitions were framed like precious artworks. In contrast, my report cards with B-plus averages were met with, "You could do better if you applied yourself like your sister." When I won second place in the science fair in 7th grade, my project sat on the dining room table for 2 days before being moved to the basement. When Amanda won first place 4 years earlier, Dad built a special shelf in the entryway so visitors would see it immediately upon entering our home. Even our birthday celebrations highlighted the disparity. Amanda's parties were elaborate affairs with professionally decorated cakes and dozens of guests. For my 12th birthday, Mom forgot to order a cake until the last minute, and Dad was too busy to attend until the very end. I blew out candles on a store-bought sheet cake, while Amanda received everyone's attention about her upcoming school dance. I learned early on that competing for my parents' approval was a losing battle. Instead, I developed a quiet resilience. I became self-sufficient, finding value in my own achievements, even when they went unnoticed by my family. I took pride in small victories that were mine alone, like the time I taught myself to change a flat tire because Dad was too busy helping Amanda prepare for a college interview to show me how. College decisions highlighted the pattern even more starkly. Amanda was accepted to an Ivy League law school with a partial scholarship. My parents threw a party for 30 people, took out a second mortgage on the house, and proudly told everyone they would cover all her remaining expenses. An investment in her future, they called it. When my acceptance letter came from the State University for Business Administration, my mother just nodded and said, "Well, at least it is affordable." My father slid a student loan application across the dinner table. "We helped Amanda because law school is expensive, but you should learn financial responsibility with your business degree," he explained, as if the logic was unassailable. I worked 3 jobs during college. Mornings at a coffee shop near campus, evenings, waiting tables at a busy restaurant, and weekends at a small property management company that managed several apartment buildings in the city. It was exhausting, but those years shaped me in ways my family could never understand. The property management job turned out to be a blessing in disguise. While filing paperwork and answering phones, I observed how buildings were run, how maintenance issues were addressed, and most importantly, how profits were generated through smart management. The owner, a gruff but fair man named Bill, noticed my interest and occasionally let me sit in on meetings with contractors or review financial statements. "You have good instincts," he told me once, after I spotted a discrepancy in a utility bill that saved one building thousands of dollars. "Most people see buildings as static things, but you see the potential in them." Those words stayed with me through all-night study sessions and double shifts. While Amanda sent home stories about law review and networking events with future judges and politicians, I was learning something that would prove far more valuable than my parents ever realized. I was learning how money worked in the real world, how properties functioned as businesses, and how to spot opportunities others missed. Little did I know then how these lessons would reshape not just my future, but the power dynamics of my entire family. After graduation, our paths diverged even further. Amanda secured a position at a prestigious corporate law firm in downtown Boston, complete with a starting salary that made my parents beam with pride at every family gathering. I started at the bottom rung of a mid-sized real estate firm, working as an administrative assistant for barely above minimum wage. My first apartment was a tiny studio in a neighborhood most people avoided after dark. The building had plumbing issues. The elevator worked sporadically at best, and my neighbors included a night shift nurse, an aspiring musician whose practice sessions echoed through the thin walls, and an elderly man who collected newspapers. He never seemed to throw away. But it was mine, and the rent was cheap enough that I could save a portion of each paycheck. Meanwhile, Amanda and my parents frequently posted social media photos of brunches at exclusive restaurants and shopping trips, where designer bags featured prominently. I later learned my parents were still supplementing her income, helping with the down payment on her luxury car, and contributing to her wardrobe because appearances matter in corporate law, as my mother explained. Family gatherings became increasingly uncomfortable. Thanksgiving dinners and Christmas celebrations centered around Amanda's latest case or office politics. When relatives asked about my work, I would barely get 3 sentences into explaining my job before the conversation would shift back to Amanda. Real estate. "That is nice, dear," my aunt would say with a pat on my hand before turning to Amanda with genuine interest. "Now tell us more about that merger you are working on. It sounds so important." Rather than becoming bitter, I channeled my energy into learning everything I could about property management and investment. I volunteered for every task at work, stayed late reviewing contracts and zoning regulations, and spent weekends touring properties with more experienced agents. My boss noticed my dedication and gradually gave me more responsibilities. The turning point came when I met Sophia, a 67-year-old woman who owned several commercial properties across the city. She came into our office looking for someone to manage a small office building she had just purchased. My boss was out sick that day, and I was the only one available. "You ask better questions than most people with 20 years in this business," she told me after our meeting. "Most people see what island. You see what could be." Sophia became my mentor, teaching me the nuances of property investment that no textbook could cover. She introduced me to her network of contractors, showed me how to spot undervalued properties, and most importantly, believed in my potential when my own family did not. When a rundown duplex came on the market in an up-and-coming neighborhood, Sophia encouraged me to make an offer. My savings were just enough for a down payment, and the bank approved a mortgage based on my steady employment history. The property needed significant work, but I saw beyond the peeling paint and outdated fixtures. For 6 months, I spent every evening and weekend renovating that duplex. I learned to retile bathrooms, repair drywall, and refinish hardwood floors by watching online tutorials and asking questions at the hardware store. When my hands were raw and my back ached from physical labor, I reminded myself that every improvement increased the property's value. I still remember the anxiety of seeking my first tenants, wondering if anyone would want to live in a building I had restored with my amateur skills. When a young couple with steady jobs signed a 2-year lease, I felt a surge of validation that no family approval could match. At the next holiday gathering, I tentatively mentioned my new status as a property owner. My father frowned slightly and said, "Rental properties are a lot of work and liability. You might have been better off with a simple retirement account," my mother added. "Just be careful. Remember your cousin Todd who lost money on that condo investment." The conversation quickly shifted to Amanda's promotion and her engagement to Jason, a neurosurgeon from a wealthy family. The following months were consumed with wedding planning discussions and praise for the couple's newly purchased luxury condo. What my family did not see was that my duplex was just the beginning. The rental income covered the mortgage with a small profit margin that I reinvested immediately. When one of the commercial tenants in Sophia's building moved out, she helped me secure a bank loan to purchase a small office space. I found reliable tenants quickly, and my portfolio began to grow. 3 years into my investment journey, I had 5 properties generating steady income. I quit my job at the real estate firm and established my own management company. My parents barely noticed the career change, dismissing it as Rhea doing her little real estate thing. Amanda, now married to Jason, frequently made comments like, "It must be nice to have such a simple business." Jason says brain surgery keeps him up at night with stress. Then came the opportunity that would change everything. The apartment building where Amanda and Jason had recently moved into the penthouse was put on the market when the owner decided to retire. It was a 12-story luxury building in one of Boston's most desirable neighborhoods, with a rooftop pool, concierge service, and spectacular city views. The asking price was far beyond what I could afford individually, but by this time I had established relationships with several investors who respected my business acumen. With their backing and the collateral from my existing properties, I formed an LLC and made a competitive offer through a shell company to maintain anonymity. When my offer was accepted, I felt a mixture of professional pride and personal vindication. I now owned the building where my golden child sister lived, though she had no idea her little sister was her landlord. The purchase of the luxury apartment building was my most ambitious move yet. The down payment required liquidating some smaller investments and leveraging every business relationship I had cultivated over the years. Sophia co-signed on the loan, telling me, "Sometimes you have to go all in on the right opportunity." For the first 6 months of ownership, I barely slept. The building had 120 units, a staff of 15, and operating expenses that made my previous properties look like pocket change. I worked closely with the management company I hired to maintain the appearance that ownership had not changed. I wanted to learn every aspect of the operation before making my presence known. I made it clear to the management company that all communications with the penthouse tenants, Amanda and Jason, should be handled with particular care. They are connected to influential people in the city, I explained vaguely. The property manager nodded, assuming I was talking about Jason's position at the hospital. Meanwhile, I continued building my own life separate from my family's expectations. My increasing success allowed me to move into a comfortable townhouse in a historic district of the city. It was not as flashy as Amanda's penthouse, but it had character with exposed brick walls, large windows that flooded the space with natural light, and a small garden where I grew herbs and flowers. More importantly, I was developing friendships with people who valued me for who I was rather than how I compared to anyone else. There was Tanya, a graphic designer, who rented office space in one of my commercial buildings. She invited me to art shows and introduced me to her creative circle. There was Luis, a contractor who worked on my renovations and eventually became a trusted business partner. And there was Daniel, an architect who helped me reimagine spaces and saw potential in properties others dismissed. These relationships were built on mutual respect and genuine interest in each other's lives. When I spoke, they listened. When I succeeded, they celebrated. When I failed, they offered support without judgment. The contrast with my family dynamics could not have been more stark. Then I met Michael at a real estate investment conference. He ran a sustainable construction company that specialized in eco-friendly renovations. Unlike other men I had dated, who were either intimidated by my ambition or saw me as a business connection, Michael was secure in his own success and genuinely curious about mine. "Tell me about your first property," he asked during our first dinner together. "Not the numbers, but how it felt when you got the keys." No one had ever asked me that before. I told him about the mixture of terror and exhilaration about sleeping on the floor of the duplex the first night, because it officially belonged to me, about the pride of fixing the first leaky faucet myself. He listened with genuine interest, asking questions that showed he valued my journey, not just the results. Our relationship developed naturally, built on shared values and mutual support. Michael understood my drive because he had a similar one, and he never once compared me to anyone else or suggested I should be different than who I was. While my personal and professional lives flourished, family gatherings continued to be exercises in invisibility. Amanda frequently brought up her address at the prestigious building, describing the concierge service and amenities in detail. "The rooftop pool is exclusively for penthouse residents," she would mention, glancing at me with barely concealed satisfaction. "The monthly fee is ridiculous, but Jason says we deserve the lifestyle his position affords us." What Amanda did not know was that I had already implemented several improvements to the building that residents had praised. The fitness center had been updated with new equipment, the lobby had been tastefully renovated, and the security system had been upgraded. The property value had increased by 12% in the first year of my ownership. When Amanda mentioned at Sunday dinner that the new owner is finally fixing things around the building, I had to hide my smile behind my water glass. "Maybe they finally hired a management company that knows what they are doing," she continued. "The hallway on our floor has new lighting, and they are talking about renovating the pool area next summer." "That sounds lovely," our mother said. "You and Jason deserve nice things." I considered revealing my ownership many times, particularly when Amanda made dismissive comments about my career. But something held me back. Perhaps it was the realization that even this achievement might be diminished by my family. Perhaps it was the quiet power of knowing something they did not. Or perhaps I was waiting for the perfect moment when the revelation would be impossible to ignore or dismiss. Michael urged me to tell them. "You have nothing to prove to them," he said one evening as we discussed the situation. "But keeping this secret seems to be taking emotional energy you could use elsewhere." He was right, of course, but family dynamics established over decades do not change easily. I decided to wait for the right moment when I would be emotionally prepared for any reaction that might come. That moment would arrive sooner than I expected, and in a way I could never have anticipated. As months passed, Amanda's behavior toward me grew increasingly hostile. What had once been subtle digs evolved into open contempt. At my cousin's baby shower, she interrupted my conversation about a community development project I was supporting to announce her upcoming vacation to the Maldives. "It is so exclusive," she said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "The resort limits guests to ensure privacy for people of a certain professional caliber." The implied message was clear. Her life was exceptional. Mine was ordinary. My mother nodded approvingly, while my father asked detailed questions about the resort's amenities. No one returned to my interrupted conversation. Family dinners became battlegrounds where Amanda would find new ways to diminish my achievements. When I mentioned receiving an award from the local business association, she responded, "Those small business groups give out certificates for everything these days." Jason received the National Surgeons Award last month. Only 3 doctors in the country were recognized. My parents reinforced these dynamics at every turn. When I renovated one of my commercial properties into mixed-use retail and residential space, a project that required months of zoning negotiations and construction management, my father's only comment was, "I hope you are not overextending yourself financially." Yet when Amanda and Jason purchased a vacation property in Vermont, my parents helped them furnish it and spoke endlessly about their investment savvy. What none of them knew was that behind Amanda and Jason's facade of success, financial troubles were brewing. Through my position as building owner, I received monthly reports on all tenants, including payment histories. Amanda and Jason had been late with their rent for 3 consecutive months. The management company had sent standard reminder notices, but I instructed them not to escalate to formal warnings yet. My own professional life was reaching new heights. I had acquired 2 more apartment buildings and was in negotiations for a downtown commercial property that would be my largest investment to date. A national real estate journal had featured me in their 30 under 40 list of promising investors, complete with a professional photo and a full-page profile of my business approach. I brought a copy of the magazine to Sunday dinner, placing it casually on the coffee table during pre-dinner drinks. My aunt noticed it first. "Rhea, is this you? On the cover of a magazine?" she exclaimed, picking it up. Before anyone could examine it, my mother quickly changed the subject. "Amanda, tell everyone about Jason's new department head position. Such wonderful news." The magazine was forgotten as everyone turned their attention to Amanda's announcement. I watched it happen with a strange detachment, as if observing a play whose ending I already knew. Later, I found the magazine tucked under a stack of mail unopened. Michael witnessed this treatment firsthand when he accompanied me to Easter dinner. In the car ride home, his hands gripped the steering wheel tightly. "I cannot believe they talked over you the entire meal," he said. "And the way your sister smirked when she mentioned your first apartment? Do they always treat you like that?" "For as long as I can remember," I admitted. "Have you ever considered just not going?" he asked gently, creating some distance. I had considered it many times. The thought of holidays, without the subtle cuts and dismissals, was appealing. But something always pulled me back. Some hope that eventually things would change, that my parents would finally see me. "Family is complicated," I said finally. "Part of me wants to cut ties completely. Another part hopes that someday they will recognize who I really am. And a third part owns their building and has not told them," Michael added, with a small smile. I laughed, despite myself. "There is that." We discussed boundaries and self-protection. Michael helped me see that continuing to engage with my family on their terms was a choice, not an obligation. Together, we developed strategies for limiting my exposure to their toxicity while still maintaining connections on my terms. As we approached my father's 65th birthday, I made a decision. This would be my final attempt to be seen by my family. If nothing changed after this milestone event, I would significantly reduce my contact with them. Michael supported my decision and helped me prepare emotionally for what might happen. What I did not expect was that the dinner would become the breaking point in ways I never anticipated. My father's 65th birthday dinner was held at Maison Laurent, an upscale French restaurant in downtown Boston where reservations were booked 3 months in advance. My mother had arranged a private dining room and invited extended family and close friends, about 20 people in total. I arrived early dressed in a navy blue dress that Michael had helped me select. It was elegant but understated, paired with simple pearl earrings that had belonged to my grandmother. I had taken extra care with my appearance not to impress anyone, but to armor myself with confidence for whatever the evening might bring. The private room was beautifully arranged, with fresh flowers and soft lighting. I placed my gift, a rare first edition of my father's favorite detective novel that had taken months to track down, on the designated table, and took a seat at the far end. From this vantage point, I could observe everyone's arrival. My parents entered together, my father in a charcoal suit that made him look distinguished, despite his receding hairline, my mother in a silver cocktail dress that complemented her carefully maintained figure. They moved through the room like minor celebrities, accepting birthday wishes and compliments with practiced grace. Aunts, uncles, and family friends arrived in clusters, each stopping to greet my parents before finding their seats. I received polite nods and brief hellos, but no one lingered in conversation. I was used to this peripheral existence in family gatherings. Amanda and Jason made their entrance last 15 minutes after the designated arrival time. Amanda wore a red designer dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent, her dark hair styled in an elaborate updo that highlighted diamond earrings. Jason followed in a tailored suit, his surgeon's hands adorned with only a platinum wedding band. They moved into the room like they owned it, Amanda's laugh carrying across the space as she kissed my father's cheek. "Happy birthday, Daddy," she said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "The gift from Jason and me just arrived from Italy this morning. We cannot wait for you to open it." The seating arrangement placed Amanda and Jason near my parents at the head of the table, while I was positioned between my mother's cousin and an old family friend I barely knew. Michael had been invited, but had a prior commitment he could not reschedule, a fact I now regretted as I faced the evening alone. Dinner proceeded as these family events typically did. The conversation revolved around Amanda and Jason's lives, their recent vacation, Jason's promotion, and plans for renovating their Vermont house. My father beamed with pride as Jason described a complex surgical procedure he had pioneered. My mother touched Amanda's hand affectionately as she shared gossip about mutual acquaintances. When my aunt politely asked about my work, I began describing the downtown development project I was spearheading. "It will transform an abandoned warehouse district into affordable housing with green space and community facilities," I explained. "That is nice, dear," my mother interrupted. "Amanda, tell everyone about the charity gala you are chairing next month." The dismissal was so casual, so practiced, that most people probably did not even notice it. But I saw my aunt's slight frown, the momentary discomfort in her eyes before she turned her attention to Amanda's story about fundraising for the hospital. The breaking point came during dessert. Amanda had been eyeing my watch, a subtle Cartier I had purchased to celebrate my latest acquisition. It was the first luxury item I had ever bought for myself, a quiet acknowledgement of how far I had come. "Nice watch," Amanda said, her tone making the compliment sound like an accusation. "Business must be good. I noticed you drove up in a new car too." Before I could respond, she turned to the table at large. "Speaking of money matters, you would not believe what is happening with our rent." The building management sent notice it is increasing to $5,600 next month. $5,600 for a penthouse that already costs a fortune. She turned back to me with a smile that did not reach her eyes. That is probably more than your mortgage, right, Ria? I bet your entire building does not cost that much. You could not even afford a closet in our place. Laughter rippled around the table. My uncle chuckled and said, "Well, not everyone can live like royalty, Amanda." My father smiled indulgently. The market in that neighborhood is very exclusive. Top dollar for top quality. My mother added, "Perhaps you should have Jason speak with the building owner, dear. Surely they would make an exception for someone of his stature." I sat perfectly still as the laughter continued around me. The familiar pain of exclusion washed over me, but this time it was accompanied by something else. A strange, calm clarity, as if I was watching the scene from above. What hurt most was not Amanda's deliberate cruelty. It was my parents' silence, their tacit approval, the way they smiled along with her jokes at my expense. After all these years, that silence cut deeper than any words could. In that moment, I made my decision. Reaching into my purse, I retrieved my phone and pulled up a specific email. Then I cleared my throat. "Actually," I said, my voice steady, despite my racing heart, "I am quite familiar with that building and its management." Amanda rolled her eyes. "Right, because you work in real estate. But trust me, this is several levels above what you deal with." "No," I said, placing my phone on the table. "Because I own it." The silence that fell over the table was absolute. Amanda's face froze in disbelief. "What are you talking about?" she finally managed. "Lambert Heights, 12 stories, 120 units, rooftop pool, reserved for penthouse residents. I purchased it 18 months ago through my investment company." I slid my phone toward her, displaying the ownership documents. "The rent increase is actually below market rate for comparable properties in the area. My management company recommended 15%, but I approved only 8%. Jason picked up my phone, examining the documents with growing disbelief. "This is not possible," he muttered. Amanda snatched the phone from him, her face flushing dark red. "This is some kind of joke or forgery. You cannot possibly own our building." My father reached for the phone next, adjusting his reading glasses as he scrutinized the screen. "Ria," he said, his voice uncharacteristically uncertain, "what is this about?" "Exactly what I said," I replied calmly. "I own the building where Amanda and Jason live. I have owned it for 18 months. The recent improvements to the hallway lighting, the new fitness equipment, the lobby renovation, all of those were my decisions." My mother shook her head in confusion. "But how could you afford such a property? It must be worth millions." $28.5 million to be exact," I said. "I have built a very successful investment portfolio over the past 8 years, while everyone at this table was too busy admiring Amanda to notice." The stunned expressions around me were almost worth the years of dismissal. Almost. The remainder of the dinner collapsed into chaos. Amanda pushed back from the table, her chair scraping loudly against the hardwood floor. "This is ridiculous," she hissed. "You are lying to get attention on Dad's birthday. How pathetic can you be?" Jason placed a restraining hand on her arm, his eyes still fixed on the ownership documents displayed on my phone. "Amanda," he said quietly, "these look legitimate." My father cleared his throat, discomfort evident in his stiff posture. "Perhaps we should discuss this privately, as a family. This is hardly appropriate dinner conversation." "Why not?" I asked, surprising myself with my calm. Amanda brought up her rent increase. I am simply providing context as her landlord. Several relatives shifted uncomfortably in their seats. My Aunt Martha murmured something about checking on the valet situation and slipped from the room. Others suddenly became intensely interested in their dessert plates. My mother attempted damage control. Rhea, if this is true, why would you keep such a thing secret from your own family? And why would you raise your sister's rent? That seems rather vindictive. The question struck me as so fundamentally unfair that I nearly laughed. Years of minimized achievements of conversations, cut short of accomplishments ignored, flashed through my mind. I did not keep it secret, I said evenly. I have been building my real estate business for 8 years. I have mentioned properties and projects at every family gathering, only to be interrupted or dismissed. 3 months ago, I brought a national magazine that featured me as a rising star in commercial real estate. Mom, you put it under the mail and changed the subject to Amanda's husband's promotion. My father's face reddened. Now that is unfair. We have always supported both our daughters equally. The statement was so blatantly false that I could no longer maintain my composure. Equally. When Amanda was accepted to law school, you took out a second mortgage to pay her tuition. When I got into business school, you gave me a student loan application. When Amanda bought her first luxury car, you helped with the down payment. When I renovated my first property with my own hands, Dad, you told me I was taking unnecessary risks. When Amanda got married, you spent $70,000 on her wedding. When I made the 30 under 40 list in National Real Estate Investments, neither of you even read the article. The words poured out years of silent hurt, finally finding voice. I had not planned this confrontation, but now that it had begun, I could not stop. For my entire life, I have watched you celebrate Amanda's every move while barely acknowledging my existence. I have sat through countless dinners, listening to detailed discussions of her career, while my own achievements were treated as uninteresting distractions. I have received polite disinterest where she received enthusiastic support. Amanda stood up, her voice sharp. This is absurd. You are twisting everything because you have always been jealous of me. And now you are trying to ruin Dad's birthday with your victim complex. Amanda, please, Jason murmured, clearly uncomfortable with the public spectacle. No, she snapped. I will not sit here and listen to this. If she really owns our building, which I still do not believe, then she deliberately kept it secret to set up some dramatic revenge scenario. That is sick, Rhea. Really sick. My mother rose as well, placing a hand on Amanda's shoulder. Let us all calm down. Rhea, I think you have misinterpreted a lot of things over the years. We have always loved both our daughters equally. That platitude, so easily spoken and so demonstrably untrue, was the final straw. I stood gathering my purse and jacket. I did not buy your building for revenge, Amanda. I bought it because it was a sound investment in an appreciating market. The rent increase is standard business practice based on current market values. If you would like to dispute it, you can contact my management company like any other tenant. I turned to my father. Happy birthday, Dad. Your gift is on the table. It is a first edition Chandler, the author you used to read when I was little. Before Amanda started law school and became the only topic of conversation. With that, I walked out of the private dining room, past the startled maitre d', and into the cool evening air. My hands shook as I retrieved my car keys, adrenaline coursing through my system. I managed to drive 2 blocks before pulling over, my vision blurred with tears I had held back for too long. In my car alone at last, I finally allowed myself to feel the full weight of what had just happened. The confrontation I had avoided for decades had finally occurred, and there was no going back. I had spoken truths long buried, and regardless of how my family responded, Something fundamental had shifted. I called Michael, my voice breaking, as I recounted the evening's events. I did not plan to tell them like that, I concluded. It just happened. "Are you okay?" he asked, concern evident in his voice. "I do not know," I answered honestly. "Part of me feels terrible for causing a scene at Dad's birthday. Another part feels like I can finally breathe after holding my breath for 33 years. Both can be true," he said gently. "Do you want me to come over?" "Please," I whispered. By the time I arrived home, my phone was flooding with notifications. Multiple missed calls from my parents, text messages from Amanda, alternating between accusations of lying and demands to rescind the rent increase. A few messages from extended family members, some expressing shock, others quiet support. I silenced my phone and waited for Michael, knowing the fallout from this night was just beginning. The next morning, I instructed my property management company to handle all communications with Amanda and Jason, according to standard protocols. They are to be treated exactly like any other tenants I specified. No special treatment, positive or negative. The property manager, unaware of the personal connection, simply nodded. The market adjustment notices went out to all penthouse units last week. We have received a few complaints, but most residents understand that even with the increase, they are still paying slightly below comparable properties in the area. In the following days, my parents made multiple attempts to contact me. I finally answered a call from my father, listening, as he attempted to both minimize past favoritism and suggest that my current actions were disproportionate. "Your mother and I have always been proud of both our daughters," he insisted. Perhaps we paid more attention to Amanda's accomplishments because they were in fields we understood better. "Law and medicine make sense to us. Your real estate ventures seemed risky, and we worried about you." "That worry never translated into interest, Dad," I replied. "Not once in 8 years did either of you ask meaningful questions about my business or celebrate my successes." He sighed heavily. "Can you at least reconsider the rent increase for your sister as a favor to the family?" His request confirmed that even now, after everything, Amanda's comfort remained the priority. "The increase is already below market rate," I explained. "This is a business matter, not a family one." 2 weeks later, I received formal notice through my management company that the penthouse tenants would not be renewing their lease. Amanda and Jason had found another luxury building across town. My mother called, her voice tight with disapproval. "I hope you are satisfied. You have driven your sister from her home." "They chose to move rather than pay market rate rent," I corrected her. "That was their decision as tenants. The new tenants moving in next month are paying the full increase without complaint." The conversation ended with my mother's exasperated sigh, a sound I had heard countless times throughout my childhood whenever I failed to meet her expectations. 6 months passed, bringing changes both professional and personal. My downtown development project broke ground with local news coverage and support from city officials. What had once been an abandoned warehouse district was beginning its transformation into a mixed-use community with both market rate and affordable housing units. At the ribbon-cutting ceremony, I stood flanked by investors, city council members, and community representatives. As I cut the ceremonial ribbon, I caught sight of a familiar figure at the edge of the crowd. My father stood alone, watching from a distance, his expression unreadable. He approached after the formal proceedings ended. "Impressive project," he said, gesturing to the architectural renderings displayed on easels. "The green space integration is particularly thoughtful." It was the first genuine compliment he had ever given my work. I nodded, unsure how to respond. "Thank you for coming," I finally said. Your mother does not know I am here, he admitted. Things have been tense at home since your revelation. We found a quiet corner away from the mingling crowd. For the first time in my memory, my father seemed uncertain, vulnerable even. I have been doing a lot of thinking, he said slowly, and some reading. My therapist recommended some books about family dynamics. You are seeing a therapist. I could not hide my surprise. He nodded, a flush of embarrassment coloring his face. After that dinner, I could not stop replaying things you said. At first, I was defensive, convinced you were exaggerating. But then, I started looking back at family photos, holiday videos, even old emails. I began to see patterns I had never noticed before. He paused, gathering his thoughts. I cannot speak for your mother. She still believes we treated you both equally. But I can see now that was not true. We did favor Amanda consistently and significantly. And I am sorry, Rhea, truly sorry. His apology, so long awaited and never expected, hit me with surprising force. Tears pricked at my eyes, but I blinked them back, unwilling to break down in a public venue. Why? I asked simply. He sighed heavily. It was not conscious, at least not at first. Amanda was our first child, and she was so much like your mother, ambitious in ways we immediately recognized and understood. When you came along, you were different, quieter, but with an independent streak. You solved problems on your own, instead of coming to us. You forged your own path. He looked down at his hands. I think in some way we assumed you needed less from us because you seemed self-sufficient. That was unfair. Every child deserves recognition and support regardless of their temperament. It was not a complete explanation, nor did it erase decades of hurt, but it was honest. And it was more accountability than I had ever expected from either of my parents. Amanda still believes you bought the building specifically to humiliate her, he continued. She and your mother talk daily, reinforcing each other's version of events. I have tried suggesting other perspectives, but he trailed off with a helpless gesture. I did not buy it for revenge, I reiterated. It was a sound business decision. The personal connection was coincidental, though I will not deny feeling a certain irony in the situation. He nodded. I believe you, and I am beginning to understand just how successful you have become on your own terms without our support. That speaks to your character and determination, Rhea. I wish I had seen it sooner. We parted with a tentative plan to meet for lunch the following month. It was a small step, but a meaningful one. I had no illusions about magical family reconciliations or dramatic personality changes. My mother and Amanda remained entrenched in their perspective, and that was unlikely to change. But this conversation with my father offered something I had long ago stopped hoping for, the possibility of being seen, truly seen, by at least one parent. My relationship with Michael continued to deepen. He had been my rock through the family upheaval, offering support without trying to solve problems that were not his to fix. 6 months after the fateful dinner, he proposed during a weekend trip to a coastal town where we were considering our next investment property. I love your ambition, your compassion, and your strength, he said, as we stood on a cliff overlooking the ocean. I want to build a life with you both, literally and figuratively. I said yes without hesitation. The engagement ring he chose was not flashy or ostentatious, but thoughtfully selected to match my personal style rather than fulfill social expectations. Like our relationship, it represented genuine understanding rather than surface impressions. We decided on a small wedding with close friends rather than a large family affair. I sent invitations to my parents and Amanda, more out of principle than expectation. My father came alone, explaining that my mother felt unwell, a transparent excuse we both pretended to accept. Amanda did not respond at all. The absence of family drama made space for authentic joy. Surrounded by people who truly knew and valued me, I experienced a celebration that honored the life I had built, rather than the role I had been assigned in my family's narrative. My business continued to thrive. The downtown development became a showcase for sustainable urban renewal, earning awards and attracting attention from investors across the country. I established a mentorship program for young women interested in real estate development, remembering how valuable Sophia's guidance had been in my own journey. Healing came not from family acceptance, but from building a life aligned with my values. The pain of parental favoritism and sibling rivalry had shaped me, but it no longer defined me. I had transformed that pain into determination, and that determination into success, both professional and personal. On the 1-year anniversary of the confrontation at my father's birthday dinner, I received an unexpected email from Amanda. It was brief and formal, lacking any warmth or genuine reconciliation, but it acknowledged my ownership of her former building and requested professional references for a real estate matter she was handling for a client. It was not an apology, but it was a tacit recognition of my expertise, something she had never before granted. I provided the references promptly and professionally. Our relationship would likely never be close, but perhaps we could establish a distant respect based on recognition of each other's capabilities rather than competitive comparison. The most profound healing came from within. Through therapy and self-reflection, I gradually released the need for parental approval that had shadowed me for so long. I recognized that while my parents' favoritism had been real and damaging, my worth was not determined by their ability to see it. The silence that had once cut deeper than words no longer held power over me. I had found my voice not in shouting to be heard, but in living authentically and allowing my actions to speak for themselves. When I look back now, I realize that the greatest victory was not owning my sister's building or finally confronting my family's dynamics. It was breaking free from the need for their validation and finding value in my own path. If you have ever felt invisible in your own family, overshadowed by someone else's light, know that your worth is not diminished by others' failure to recognize it. Your path may be quieter, less conventional, or simply different from what your family understands, but it is no less valuable. Sometimes the greatest act of self-love is to stop seeking approval from those unwilling to give it, and instead build a life that needs no external validation to be meaningful. Have you ever had to stand up to family members who underestimated you? Share your story in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more journeys of resilience and self-discovery. Remember, sometimes the family we choose understands us better than the family we were born into. Thank you for listening, and may you find the strength to value yourself even when others do not.